The DNA results loaded on a Tuesday morning, while I was eating toast. I almost didn't open the email. I almost let it sit there the way I'd let the kit sit on my counter for 6 weeks unopened because grief makes you slow and careful with things that might hurt. But I opened it. And when I read the relationship category next to my sister Ellen's name, I set my toast down and I did not move for 4 hours. Not sister. Parent or child. 97.4%. Ellen was 33 years older than me. The math was not complicated. And in that gray Portland morning, with the rain starting and stopping outside my kitchen window, 31 years of my life rearranged itself around a fact that had been true every single day of it. Welcome back to Betrayal Ledger Stories, where family secrets never stay buried for long. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and join the family, because this story is one of the wildest ones we've ever told. Let's get into it. My name is Diane Calloway. I am 31 years old. And the woman who held my hand through every important moment of my life, who called me every Sunday at 7, who drove 4 hours to sit in bleachers at my high school graduation with a disposable camera because she said phone cameras never felt real enough for important days, was not my sister. She was my mother. And she had known it every single day for 31 years. I need you to understand who Ellen was before I tell you what she turned out to be. Because this story only makes sense when you feel the weight of what was hidden inside it. Ellen Calloway was 33 years older than me. Growing up, I had always understood that gap as the reason she felt more like a second parent than a sibling. She knew my pediatric history better than our parents did. She was in the recovery room when I got my tonsils out at 7, sitting with a cup of ice chips and a paperback she wasn't reading because she was watching my face. She called every Sunday evening at 7. In 31 years, I can count on one hand the number of times that call didn't come. She was my person. The relationship I measured every other relationship against without realizing I was doing it. My parents, Robert and Margaret Calloway, had lived in the same suburb of Portland their entire married lives. Robert worked for the county assessor's office for 32 years. Margaret was an elementary school librarian. They were not complicated people. They were good people, the kind who showed up to things, paid attention, and loved you in the practical language of action rather than declaration. They had Ellen at 22. They had me at 55. That age gap was always the explanation. My parents were older. Ellen was more like a second parent than a sibling. Of course she was present. Of course she knew everything about me. The numbers explained it all, and for 31 years I accepted those numbers without pressing on them. I never pressed on them. My mother died in February. She had been declining for 2 years. The gradual kind of decline that makes the end feel both expected and entirely impossible when it finally arrives. She died at home in the bedroom on Maple Court, my father beside her, Ellen on a flight from Seattle that landed 40 minutes too late, and me holding her hand until it went still. At the funeral home, after we had made all the decisions about flowers and music and readings, the coordinator handed me a small white box. A complimentary DNA ancestry kit. Something families could use to feel connected to the person they had lost. I took it because my hands needed something to hold. I put it on my kitchen counter when I got home and I looked at it for 6 weeks. Grief makes you slow. It makes you careful. It makes you set things down and walk past them because you are not yet ready for what they might say. 6 weeks after the funeral, on a Sunday afternoon when the quiet had become something I needed to fill, I opened the kit. I mailed it Monday morning. The results came back 3 weeks later on a Tuesday, delivered to my inbox while I was eating toast in the gray Portland light. I opened Ellen's match first because I knew she was in the system. She had used the same service 2 years earlier, and we had spent a Sunday evening phone call going through her ancestry results together, laughing at the percentages, feeling the comfortable pleasure of information that confirms things you already suspected. Her name was there, just like I expected. The relationship category was not what I expected. Parent or child. 97.4%. I set my toast down. I clicked the information icon. I read the explanation of how the service calculated relationship categories from shared genetic material, the difference between a full sibling match and a parent-child match in the underlying data. I read it twice. Then I read the result a third time. 97.4%. Parent or child. I sat at that kitchen table for 4 hours and I did not call anyone. What I did instead was think. I thought about my parents having me at 55. I thought about how that had always been the explanation, available and sufficient and never questioned. I thought about Ellen catching a flight from Seattle and landing 40 minutes too late to be in that bedroom when my mother died. I thought about her face at the funeral home, the way she had moved through those hours with the contained, purposeful grief of someone carrying two losses at once and allowing herself to show only one of them. And then I thought about something I had not thought about in years. When I was 16, I had gone looking for my birth certificate for a school document I needed. I had found it in my father's filing cabinet in the manila envelope where he kept the family records. My name, the date, Portland, Oregon, everything where it should have been. But the mother's name on the certificate had been slightly smudged, the ink blurred at the edge in a way that I had always assumed was just age and handling. I had gotten what I needed and put the envelope back and not thought about it again. I thought about it now. I drove to my father's house that evening. He was sitting in the kitchen, smaller than he had been before my mother died, the way people sometimes become smaller when the person who anchored their size in the world is gone. I sat across from him and I told him I had used the DNA kit. I told him what the results said. He did not look surprised. That was the first thing I noticed. He looked relieved and devastated at the same time, the expression of a man who has been carrying a secret for 31 years, and has just been told he no longer has to carry it, but has also just lost the choice of when to set it down. He went to his filing cabinet. He came back with the manila envelope. He set it on the table between us. Inside was my original birth certificate. Unsmudged. Complete. The mother's name, typed clearly in the official font of a 1993 Oregon Vital Records document, was not Margaret Calloway. It was Ellen Marie Calloway. I sat with that for a long time. My father sat with me. The kitchen was quiet. The clock on the wall ticked the way it had ticked for 41 years of dinners and Sunday mornings and ordinary evenings that had all been built on top of this. He told me everything. Ellen had been 19. The father's name was a man named Gregory, someone who had been in her life for 8 months and gone before she knew she was pregnant, the kind of leaving that happens without formal announcement, there and then not there. She had told her parents, Robert and Margaret 55 and 53, who had looked at their 19-year-old daughter and at the situation she was in and had made the decision that people make when they love someone completely and believe, with the genuine conviction of people who have not yet lived long enough to know the limits of that belief, that they know what is best. They would raise the baby as theirs. Ellen would stay close. The arrangement would be better for everyone. Better for the baby especially. I called Ellen at 11 the next morning. She answered on the second ring with the warmth she had always answered with. I told her what my father had shown me. What the birth certificate said. What the DNA results had confirmed. The silence that followed was the longest silence I had ever heard from her. Not the silence of surprise. The silence of 31 years finally exhaling. She said, I have been waiting for this call for 31 years. I drove to Seattle that Saturday. 5 hours on I-5 with the rain following me north, steady and gray, the wipers on low the entire drive. Ellen was on her porch when I pulled up. The gray cardigan she had worn for as long as I could remember. The one with the fraying cuff on the left sleeve she had been meaning to repair since I was in high school. She looked the same as she always looked. She also looked entirely different. Both things were true. I did not yet have the language for how they were both true at once. We sat at her kitchen table. She made tea. She told me the version my father had not been there for, the 19-year-old version, the one that lived inside her and had never fully found a shape that fit the life she had built around it. She told me about Gregory, about telling her parents, about the night they had all sat in the kitchen on Maple Court and decided together what the arrangement would look like. She told me about watching me grow up from 2 hours away, about the Sunday calls, about the disposable camera at the graduation because phone cameras never felt real enough for important days. She told me she had agreed with her parents when she was 19 because she had not known what else to do. She told me she had been less certain at 29. Less certain still at 39. She had arrived at 52, her current age, understanding that she no longer agreed but had run out of ways to disagree that didn't feel like a different kind of damage. I asked her if she had wanted to tell me. She said every Sunday for 31 years. I asked her why she didn't. She said because every Sunday she also didn't want to be the thing that broke what we had. And she had never been able to decide which risk was larger. I understood that. I sat with it the way you sit with something that is painful and also completely human and does not ask you to resolve it. We walked through her neighborhood in the February rain. We looked at the garden she had been photographing and sending to me for years, bare in winter. The raised beds my father had built her the summer I was 8, visible under the bare February sky. She had let me believe he built them as a gift to his oldest daughter. I understood now that he had built them as an apology, as a way of showing up for the daughter who had shown up for everyone else. I drove home Sunday evening with the rain still following me south and the particular feeling of someone who has been handed an enormous amount of information and is only beginning to understand its weight. I did not have clean answers. I did not have a resolution that fit the shape resolutions are supposed to have. What I had was a phone call at 7 that evening. Ellen's voice. The same warmth it had always carried, and the understanding that the warmth had always meant exactly what I understood it to mean, even when I did not have the right name for its source. Some things are true before you have the words for them. I had the words now. A month later, I drove to Portland's Vital Records office and requested a copy of my original birth certificate. I already knew what it said.